amazingly great guy and a friend of the CSU at multiple campuses. He also has been an instructor at different universities as well. So he's the Chief Information Officer of the City of LA and General Manager for an IT agency with 462 IT professionals and support personnel within the 50,000 across 50,000 city employees in the City of LA. So one of the marks of distinction that Ted has had at the City of LA is carrying the #1 digital city in America. And that, as well as the number of efforts that you're going to see him present on in the next few minutes, we're going to welcome Ted Ross. So Ted, thank you for coming.
Thank you very much. I really need to bring Chris wherever I go. Every room I enter, I need someone to give me this kind of herald's call. I appreciate Chris as a really strong and great IT leader and as a friend, and it's really a sincere pleasure to be here with you this morning and to talk about a really important topic, and that's technology. But more than just technology as a topic, we're talking about people. We're talking about civilization. We're talking about Los Angeles, in this case, the second largest city in the United States. And how does technology move the needle in urban areas that are just so essential to the way the world is being governed and the way people are living? So we're going to specifically talk about building this quote-unquote smarter Los Angeles for the 2028 Olympics and beyond. So that's one of the distinctions and the opportunity I get to have. Quite often when you run into someone in government, you should ask yourself this question: am I listening to an elected official person, someone who's working for a mayor or a council member? They're usually fast talking. They usually say all sorts of acronyms. Or am I talking to someone who does the work? I'm going to tell you right now that you're fortunately talking to someone who came up through civil service. I have spent over 20 years at the City of Los Angeles. I've worked at the LAX. I've worked with the Controller's Office. And I've been a part of the IT agency. And I'm saying it for an important reason. I'm not just that fast-talking person who goes around giving speeches all the time. I have to run this department. I have to run the IT department, which is over 400 people and does a lot of different services covering a lot of different topics. So when I discuss this, we're not discussing this hypothetically. We're discussing this as practitioners, people who have to strategize, people who have to identify technologies, work with various stakeholders and constituencies, people who have to implement technology, and very importantly, people who have to maintain technology. Because what we often call legacy technology is the stuff everyone was excited about 10 years ago, right? And so technology is increasingly rolling and coming and producing. 20, 25 years ago, what we're all excited about was computers on every desk, right? 10 years ago, what we're so excited about was social media and smartphones and big data and what those things can mean. So what are we excited about today? And what are we excited about today? AI. Everyone gets into AI, right? And AI is literally just the next iteration of a suite of technologies. And there's going to be something else in 5 years or 10 years. And so what's really exciting about my job is it's always changing. And what's really terrifying about my job is it's always changing. Right? And so if you're somebody who likes the idea of, I'll say this, I think Chris could attest to it, it keeps us young, so to speak. You can't just sit in a certain place. It's always evolving, it's always moving. So when we talk about this topic, you know Los Angeles, I know Los Angeles, but let me tell you a few facts about Los Angeles that maybe you do or maybe you don't know. So over 4 million residents, right? Second largest city in the United States. And quite often, if you travel, everything in Southern California is called Los Angeles. Am I right? Right? So sometimes I'll run into somebody, maybe we're in Europe or some far-flung part of the world, so to speak, and you run into them and they'll say, I'm from LA. Go, really, I'm from LA, what part? And they'll say, Riverside, right? Because who knows what Riverside is out in Germany or wherever it is that you are, and that's fine. And quite often I run to folks, my colleagues at the county, and they're like, you've got to understand, Ted, that Los Angeles is only one of 88 cities in the county. But it's named the County of Los Angeles, right? And so clearly it's this epicenter, and there's a lot of gravity that's brought to it. It's an economic engine, and so many times everyone just calls everything Los Angeles when everything is not Los Angeles, to be clear. But we're in a region of 10 to 12 million people, right? So there's such this large urban area called Southern California, of which LA may be the largest, but of course there's so many other cities and so many communities. But in LA, we have over 500,000 businesses, and we get right now about 46 million visitors. We're getting back to pre-COVID level of visitors. So when we think about our stakeholders, when we think about who we deliver technology for, we have to come up with a North Star. And it's really important because, as you could imagine, I don't work in City Hall. I work across the street at City Hall East, right? So I'm right across the street from City Hall. There's a lot of influence, there's a lot of drama, there's a lot of excitement, there's always something going on to take us off track, right? To get us running in 20 different directions. And so it's very clear and it's very important for us to have a North Star. So when we're doing something and we're unsure about a direction to go, we ask ourselves, how would this affect the 4 million people who live here? The 500,000 businesses that call LA home? And how does it affect 46 million people who visit us, who are spending their money to be here? And that becomes our North Star, and it helps us when we're in the midst of all the politics and the confusion and the budget cuts and the he said, she said. Where are our services going and how do we deliver them? LA is a big physical footprint. We have 22,000 miles of roads within the city of Los Angeles that we have to maintain. 6,000 miles of sewers. There's literally a city under a city in a city like Los Angeles. And by the way, when you think of a sewer system, you may not think of something so large, right? You can run machinery, people can operate under there. All of that takes to be able to run sewage. And 37% of all US imports, right? About 40% of all US imports come in through the ports. So Port of Los Angeles, which is the big one, Port of Long Beach, which is smaller, but you combine them together and they account for about 40%. So 4 out of 10 pencils or pens come in through there. Cars, a long list of things that come through it. Los Angeles is a massive economic engine with huge importance across the globe. It's the rim to the Pacific, right? There's a lot of things, as well as, I don't want to get started on the LA Dodgers. I'm not in the right place here. I'm born and raised in LA, by the way. And by the way, I love the Angels. And growing up, they were the California Angels, right? And you used to go to Angels Stadium and take the tour and all these other things. And growing up, the Dodger Stadium never let us take the tour. But I am born and raised a Dodger fan. But please, don't hold it against me. Don't hold it against me. So, but great cities have great challenges, right? And so we live in a world of increased urbanization. So it doesn't really matter. It's not just a US thing. All around the world, people are increasingly moving to cities. Even with COVID, they just changed the cities they were going to. So maybe a Los Angeles may not have been so popular in a COVID era, but people were going to Oklahoma City. They were going to Austin. They were going into urban areas. And if you would ask the United Nations, things like sustainability, environmental impact, if cities could get it right, the world will get it right, right? Because that's really the nature of it. We're in an increasingly urbanizing society, not just in the US, but across the world. But great cities, of course, have great challenges, so we seek solutions. All you have to do is just open up the internet, take a look at any paper, and we see a long list of challenges. LA is known for several things. We're known for great weather, SoCal too. We're known for celebrities, right? I had relatives coming from Ohio this last weekend. It was like one story after another. I had to tell them about celebrities. Remember that time, sweetheart, when we saw this person? Remember that time we saw that person? You know, that time that Al Pacino was at Toys R Us on the phone talking about buying a bicycle? Yes, these are these ridiculous LA stories that you get. But we're also known for traffic, right? And that's not just an LA thing. And so with all of these challenges that we have, anytime you take millions of people and you push them into the same place, you're going to have challenges. And so we all seek solutions. And there's a long list of ways to try to tackle solutions. But I would argue the greatest solution to all of our urban challenges has got to be technology. Okay? Why? Why is it technology? First of all, technology gives us awareness. Los Angeles is 469 square miles, which means I could be standing at City Hall and all sorts of things could be happening in the Valley, San Pedro, Pacoima, East Los Angeles, and I would never see it. So how do I know what's happening? The answer is you need things like sensors. What's going on with traffic? What's going on with crime? How are things going with pollution? Literally, technology is the way to be in tune with what's happening in Los Angeles. Technology also delivers insight. So I can gather mass amounts of data. Let's say using those sensors, I'm gathering all this data. What do I do with all of this? If I can pull in data and I can start to curate it, I can start to analyze it, I can start to leverage these tools. Remember, we're obsessed with things like AI. There's a whole ton of innovations happening around data analysis in a variety of other areas that we often don't see because it's considered back office. And yet, we can get insight into that data, which means we can make data-driven decisions. I love this simple but powerful concept that when the planning department, someone maybe submits a permit, they want to build, let's say, a 4-story apartment building. The fact that with GIS you could literally show throughout the day where the shadow would be cast on that building and how that would affect the community that you're in, that's a powerful way to show the community the effect of something that has yet to be built. Right? So there's so many ways. Any Sim City players here? I know it's a bit of a niche conversation, right? But the idea that you're simulating a city, you're using technology to do so. And it's a very powerful idea that means that you could think and you can examine, you can analyze before you do. Not to jump ahead too far, but do you know why they call them smart cities? What's a dumb city? What's a dumb city? Does anyone want to be a resident of a dumb city? The expression comes from, honestly, the first time I remember hearing the expression smart blank was the first Persian Gulf War in 1990. And we were all amazed at the news because they discussed the idea of a smart bomb. A smart bomb. So a dumb bomb, a plane is flying, it drops a bomb. Pardon me, I'm talking about war, which I know is a terrible topic, right? But the reality is too often these innovations show up in that landscape. So a plane flying drops a bomb, whatever the altitude of that plane, whatever when the bomb is released, there may be effects of wind, etc., but you could calculate reasonably where that bomb will land. But once that bomb is dropped, you cannot control that bomb. It is going to land where it's going to land. The smart bomb was this idea that instead of being dumb, where you couldn't influence it, you can now adjust it, where it starts to guide itself so you could avoid something terrible, like a hospital, and you could aim it towards a military target, like a radar station or whatever it may be. That's what made it smart. So being smart is not about being intelligent, it's about being something that you can influence. A smart city is a city that can be influenced. A city that doesn't just operate, a city in which you can control traffic, a city in which you can manage various aspects of it, where you can pull levers and push buttons. Whereas a dumb city, it's just organic. Whatever happens, just happens, and you have little influence over that city. Technology empowers influence and ability to change outcomes. When we have a multi-alarm fire, let's say over by the 405, close to Skirball or close to the Getty, our ability to redirect traffic so we don't have hundreds of thousands of people driving into an evacuation area, that is influence. And we can do that through our traffic surveillance and control systems. Technology is cost effective. And I know what you hear. There are some elements of technology that are pricey. Fiber optics, infrastructure, some of these things really do cost. But there's many other elements that are not expensive, that are relatively low cost. So technology is generally cost effective, you could duplicate it, and it's highly accessible. It's amazing how we used to be, it used to be for you to get access to city government, you need to have a lawyer and you need to have wealth and you have money so you can exert your influence. But increasingly people are doing it through social media. They're doing it through things from their smartphone, right? They have all sorts of abilities to start to apply influence, and in the same way you can provide access. The ability to be able to offer up tools and solutions so that anyone through the smartphone can gain access and make a request or gather information, that is democracy. And that's one of the greatest ways to influence and to engage people who, by the way, generally speaking, are kind of skeptical of their democracy. Okay? Technology allows that. Solutions that were previously unavailable to generations. Name me one tool in our toolbox that gets better every year. That is technology. So there were issues that we had 20 years ago that we still have today, but the tools we have today are very different than the tools we had 20 years ago. So what am I doing? I'm making this case that technology can make us smarter, and I see technology as being one of the greatest solutions to tackle urban challenges. It's not the be-all, end-all, folks. You can't just, let's just put technology on, everything's just fine. There's clearly human beings involved in it. And as I could attest, and Chris can attest, but I can't put words in Chris's mouth, I don't want to do that. Increasingly, we are starting to get involved in technology projects where it's not about the technology anymore. I hate to tell you that. 10 years ago, I felt like, oh my gosh, we have to have the right technology. Now, technology is often becoming quite ubiquitous. It doesn't matter if you choose Microsoft or Amazon Web Services or whatever it may be. There's a lot of technology and a lot of tools. You know what's becoming the weaker link in the chain on many of the projects that I see? People. People. If I could tell you how many times I've been in a technology project where it's very clear the direction where we should go, and then some person goes, well, I don't want it that way. There's an old saying, it's not about technology projects. There are no such thing as technology projects. There's people projects with technology. Now, I'm not one of those people who says, well, let's just get the people out of the project, we'll all be fine. That's ridiculous. All these projects are about people. But increasingly, we find that people dig in their heels and they make it a culture war, when it really should be about what are our processes, how can we improve, and what technology is available for us to do it. And let's embrace the fact that what we're proposing is going to make us probably uncomfortable, because we were doing something a certain way. And the longer I've been doing it that way, the more uncomfortable I will be. Because human nature is, and I embrace it. We're humans. That's what it's all about. But humans should also change, right? And we're going to need to think about it. It doesn't mean we go out and do it just for change's sake. But it questions this idea of what does it mean for Los Angeles then to be smarter? So how do we define a smart city? And this is our long definition, right? But a smart city is a city that efficiently and ethically uses secure technology, data, and resources, and I'll explain these in a second, to improve quality of life and sustainable services for residents, businesses, and visitors. The full definition, folks. Basically, a smart city, it needs to be efficient. Much like the CSU system, the City of LA may be a big organization, but we have all sorts of financial constraints. In fact, some of you may have seen the last summer or so in the news that we had a $1 billion deficit. Yes, billion with a B, right? And it results in budget cuts and loss of staffing and less money for things, and there goes the training budget and all that kind of stuff. So we have to operate within a scope. It needs to be ethical. The technology I deploy can literally ruin someone's life. Do you understand? I can deploy technology that, let's say it's cyber insecure and it creates a data breach and now they have all sorts of identity theft problems. I could use technology that literally lays people off, right? There's a long list of terrible things. I could deploy AI that has a bias to it. And if I'm using it to make decisions that influence someone's, let's say, bank account, I am now, ruining their life. There's a long list of things I could do bad with technology. It's a longer list of what you can do good, but it's a long list of bad. And the idea is that a smart city does three things. You use technology, use data, and use resources. That is what I would call the holy trinity of a smart city. It's not just about tech. It's tech, data, and even people. When we think about filling potholes, we're not really there yet to fill that with a robot. When we think about constituent services, people are very involved in all of it. So a smart city takes technology, data, and human resources, and it aligns them together towards outcomes. And they do it to improve quality of life, they do it to improve sustainability, and you do it for those residents, businesses, and visitors. So that is a longer definition, but important one of what it means to be a smart city. In addition, a smart city builds digital and connected city services. Our job, my job, is to make LA as digital as possible, which, by the way, is a big ambition. Because remember those people who dig in their heels and they don't like stuff? They're part of my group of people. They're part of my stakeholders, but they're part of the reason why I can't digitize more that I'd like to digitize. Okay? Or they want me to digitize it, but it needs to be a Rube Goldberg machine. It needs to have 7,000 steps before I can digitize it, which is insane, ridiculous, and unaffordable. So I don't say it even with derision. That's just part of the game. The game is to take technology and implement it, even with people who want to make it extremely complicated or over-engineer it. And a smart city uses cybersecurity. My job, in one hand, is to digitize the world around me, to make it more effective, to make it more efficient, but also to protect those digital processes. Right? There was a book that I thought was very interesting, and it described this idea that in the beginning, if you had to rob someone, see, I went from war to robbery, so I apologize. My analogies are bad, but I maybe got your attention here. But if I were to rob this gentleman, 200 years ago, the amount of money I can get is whatever this gentleman has. Then with the invention of a train, I could rob an entire train. So I can now walk from car to car robbing everybody. So what happened? Criminals started robbing trains. Or they went to a bank where all of your money was centralized, so I would try to rob that. Criminals are actually kind of straightforward when it's all said and done. They want to make as much as they can. In a digital world, they will try to rob you digitally. Because face-to-face, I only get this much, and in a train, I only get that much, and through a bank, I only get this much, but if I could do it digitally, that means I could be wherever nation I am, wherever I am, and I could try to rob as many people as possible and do so without ever coming across them face-to-face. And that's fine. That's their mission. Our mission is to prevent that from ever happening, right? Certainly not with our stuff. So as we digitize our experiences, we need to secure our experiences, which means cybersecurity needs to be layered through and through, which means that that same person who digs in their heels and they want technology to have 7,000 steps, that person often also says, let's just do it this simple, cheap way and forget about cybersecurity. And they won't say it that way, but they'll certainly be pushing it that way. Or that's the kind of person who creates some kind of shadow IT system in which they don't do any of the steps required for cybersecurity, which means they have now created this terrible option to ruin people's lives, right? We need to ensure that these digital experiences people have is good and not bad, and cybersecurity is going to be that. Which then brings us, of course, to things like artificial intelligence, right? AI, the constant conversation, which, by the way, I'm bullish, as they'd say in stocks, on AI. There's a lot of opportunity in the world of AI. There's a ton of hype. There's a ton of, of snake oil, as they say in AI, but there's tremendous amounts of opportunity. And I would argue it's one of the greatest technologies of our lifetime, right? It's going to dramatically change all sorts of ways that we interact with computers. I liken it to when desktop computers were deployed in the late 90s. There were tons of people. For you young folks out there, you may have no idea what I'm talking about, and that's fine. But for decades, work was done with paper, with pencil, with pen. We even had duplicate forms, right, where you'd have carbon between them so that you didn't have to fill out the same form twice, which at the time was innovative. I write on one form, and it shows up on 3 forms. Whoa! What kind of black magic is this, people would say, right? That was our world, and we were doing things with paper. And by the way, it was way more efficient than what existed before. But it's nothing compared to what we can do now. If you were to fast forward then when these people started to introduce the computer, there was this idea now that everyone had a computer at work. What a crazy idea. And in the 1990s and the 80s, depending where you were, that was an insane idea. And being a person who had to deploy computers at a school district, at LA Unified, but where they got the very first, there was all sorts of people who stood there and they said, I'm not sure what I'm going to do with this computer, but where can I get access to solitaire? For those of you old enough, you'll know what I'm talking about. Everyone loved Microsoft Windows Solitaire, and they were playing all the time. But they said, can you give me a link to that solitaire game I saw someone else playing? But the point was, it had a dramatic effect because people who were not using a computer now had a computer. And in the beginning, no one quite sure what to do with that computer. Then with time, it became a point where everyone was only on a computer. So much so, we had to work on our ergonomics, right? My wrist hurts, my back hurts. Why? Because I'm always on this computer. Fast forward to today, and people are on phones and a variety of other things, right? And so the point is, these things make these leaps and bounds. AI is going to change just as dramatically as the desktop computer changed the way work occurred. AI does the same. And much like the early desktop computer, people weren't sure what to do with the computer at first. And we're in an era today where a lot of people aren't quite sure what to do with AI. But it will be as impactful. Same with the internet. When the internet kind of became popular, the internet had been around for decades, but when it started to become publicly accessible, most folks didn't know what to do with it. What was Amazon originally? Bookstore. For many people in the room, they'll say, what's that? Right? And they'll go, what is a bookstore? What does it even mean? Some folks grew up and all they know is an ATM, or they just use their app, right, for banking. So there's whole concepts that just don't even exist as we progress. And yet today, Amazon is far from being a bookstore. For any of you who have the opportunity to, over in Eastvale, California, over by Corona, You could go online right now and you could reserve a tour of the Amazon distribution center. It's right there at no cost. I actually did it recently. I urge you, if you're interested, go check out the Amazon Fulfillment Center, and they'll give you like a 1.5-hour tour. It'll scare you and impress you, both at the same time. If I remember the numbers correctly, when I click order and I say, I would like some more Colgate toothpaste, in about 10 to 12 minutes, it will be on a truck. And they will walk you through and show you how all that works. 10 to 12 minutes, it'll be on a truck. That's why in a half hour when you say, you know what, let me go ahead and pull that back, Amazon will say, I'm sorry, it's already on the truck. That's the whole point about it. I was like, why is it, it's going to be here in 2 days, why? And Amazon's like, you don't understand. It goes from this truck to that facility, and once it's at that facility, it goes to this delivery driver and that delivery driver. So it's a whole thing. But clearly, it's an amazing feat of innovation, and it's a free tour, so feel free to check it out. And these things get driven by concepts like AI. So why is AI so popular? There are so many definitions of AI, and yet the Encyclopedia Britannica, I think, gives one of the best. Artificial intelligence is the ability of a digital computer or a computer-controlled robot to perform tasks commonly associated with intelligent beings. This is why people love AI, and this is why people hate it, because AI in concept is technology that does what only people could do. In some ways, it's really impressive. AI can help you write a paper. You know, the classic idea that you can say, you know, give me a 5-page paper on Abraham Lincoln, and it's going to be pretty accurate. That's a wild concept decades ago. How could a computer write? Well, at the same time, you know, AI is being utilized for cyber attacks, right? So there's a long list of things that these come down to. Like any technology, it becomes this very complicated nuance of, is it good, is it bad? It's both. And it often comes down to just how you use it. You know, some of the same innovations that we described when it comes to war are used to make food, are used to help, you know, get rid of disease. Like innovation can do so many good things and it can do harmful things. And it often just comes down to how it's being utilized. AI has this dramatic concept where it could be used to learn, it can reason, it can problem solve, it could perceive, and it can master language. And it may not master it perfectly, but it gets better and better and better. And I think it's so funny because sometimes I'll be called into city council and they'll say, Ted, we hate automated translation. And I'm thinking to myself, first of all, human translation is very expensive. And it's also very slow. Every time you change something, you say, quick, get it to the humans. They got to translate it. So sometimes it might take weeks or even months to get everything translated from a human perspective, although it is better when humans translate it. But you know how I know that automated translation is good enough? Because on 90 Day Fiancé, they pull out those translators and some guy from America is about to marry some woman from the Philippines and neither speaks the language, right? I say that jokingly, but the world has already passed that by, and often government will say, I don't know if we can trust automated translation. People are getting married, folks, and all they are using is automated translation. I'm sure it could get the job done should we need it. So what is LA's approach to AI? There's a lot to this, and I'm going to be concise. In fact, we have a whole strategy that I include a link to of our Los Angeles AI roadmap, if you're curious to read it. And for us, we do not write 200-page strategies. I just personally find them unreadable, and so we'll try to make them short and pithy, 30 to 50 pages if you're ever curious for a read. But number one is to deliver AI training, okay? I believe that artificial intelligence is the number one opportunity to upskill my workforce. There are things, and when I say my workforce, I don't mean IT folks, I mean everybody who works at the City of LA. This is a golden opportunity to retrain people, because over the last 15, 20 years, there's things my people should have learned and they didn't learn them. Because over the last 25 years, I would argue the greatest improvements haven't been the technology, it's been often the IT culture, right? The concept of being digital, a digital-first mindset. Digital is agnostic. It's not even about a specific technology. It's about looking digital first, which is a very powerful concept. The idea of being agile, right? The idea that we run into a problem, we quickly shift gears. The idea of failing fast and failing forward. Amazon is not Sears.com. Do you understand? For those old enough to remember Sears, right? A lot of companies built websites to sell stuff. Amazon is way beyond a website that sells stuff. Amazon is about a completely different culture and a completely different mindset. And I'm not saying Amazon is perfect or Amazon's right. I'm not even weighing in on that. But when it comes to the art of doing business, Amazon is far superior than Sears ever was. And 100 years ago, Sears was the gold standard, right? In the 1800s, the Sears catalog was what brought many Americans together. Not too far from here is the Nixon Library, right? And if I remember correctly, it's Nixon's house, and it was a Sears catalog house. Someone literally ordered a house. It was delivered to their home, and then they built it. That was done through Sears. But enter the 1900s and the late 1900s and the early 2000s, and Sears compared to Amazon was nothing. And when we talk about the Googles, the Apples, the Facebooks, the Metas, we talk about I'm running out of steam here. Google, Meta, Apple, Amazon. We're talking about companies that are far beyond technology. These are companies that had very powerful business practices. Right? They're a very modern mindset. And when we think about government's number one challenge isn't that they can't afford some of the technologies. Their problem is that they often lack the culture and the mindset that we're finding in these companies. Okay? Now, I'm not saying to do all of it. Like, these are the move fast, break things, fire people companies. That's not what I'm advocating for here, folks. I can't just lay off 20% of my workforce because I feel like it. That's not how we operate. But the reality is there's a ton of cultural traits that show up in these very enterprising, very innovative businesses that we often lack in our institutions. And it would do us well to read some books, see what their playbooks are like, and adopt some of their techniques, because some of them are absolutely genius. So delivering AI training is number one in our practice. Intro to AI, we got that through Google. AI privacy and security, we actually ran that ourselves. Adobe Firefly, so the idea that we were actually training AI into our content creators and our graphic designers. The idea of AI on AWS for our developers. Preventing AI financial fraud. What does this mean? This means that AI has a variety of different customers. Do you see what I'm saying? There's broad users of it, there's specialized users of it, and that's what makes it a little complicated. We invited a member of the US Secret Service to help give our preventing AI financial fraud. Only the finance folks really should care about that. We had 3,000 people attend that online meeting because it's sexy. They wanted to hear the Secret Service talk about fraud. And you know what everyone wants to do? Everyone wants to see the real version and the AI version. They want to try to guess which one's which. Guess what? It's just becoming extremely hard to do that. So you can't make your controls on guessing which one's which. You've got to make your controls based on other things, right? But the point is there's a ton of training that you got to deliver and get people up to speed, because much like the Amazons, the Googles, the Metas, right? This is about a conversation about culture, about know-how, as much as it is about tools. Deploying generative AI tools. Of course, you need tools. We're very proud to be the largest government to deploy Google Gemini to a workforce. We have about 28,000 employees leveraging it for a whole variety of different capabilities and topics and use cases, and we've been doing it for about a year and a half. Adobe Firefly for creatives, right? GitHub Copilot for developers. This is just a short list. So we start to identify, because AI is not something I feel that I could kind of from the top down kind of push out at everybody. There's going to be enterprise tools, there's going to be specialized tools. There's going to be specialized software as a service tools. Deploying AI as a service. In addition to that, we have to build our own LLMs, right? Our own large language models, because there's going to be specialized use cases in areas like permitting, right? Like construction, in which you could actually take the specialized body of knowledge in that area, and then you could leverage AI on top of that. And these are powerful for government, because not only are these areas that have the right repository of very refined and very specific and capable data sets, this is also an area that no one understands. And probably one of the greatest examples we're going to talk about a little later is this idea of rebuilding in the Palisades fire, right? People do not understand all the rules associated with this. Deploying vendor-built AI tools. So whereas that first list, like Gemini and Firefly, are tools that you turn on inside of your software, which are almost arguably the easiest to use, right? At the other end of the spectrum is custom-built tools, where we literally go to a vendor and say, build us something that does this. It has the greatest capability, but it also has the greatest risk. So we've already been using AI for pre-plan check. When it comes to Palisades fire victims, I've never had a house burned down. right? Whether you're in Altadena or Palisades, like that's a terrible experience. I could only imagine. And I had several staff whose homes did burn down, and it was a terrible impact on them. The ability to get them to quickly rebuild as fast and as efficiently as possible is a very important conversation. But quite often, even the best contractors, they'll develop plans and schemes that actually violate code. So the ability to take your plans and to submit them and to run them and get within 30 minutes to an hour to get a response back to say where all your potential violations are before you ever submit it to a human being, before you ever pay for them to review, that's a powerful tool that the City of LA has already been doing with AI. And then, of course, building AI safeguards. There's different strategies for AI policies and rules. Some organizations build a standalone AI policy. At the City of Los Angeles, we embed AI into existing policies. So we've always had an employee acceptable use policy that we've added AI to. We've always had an information security policy that we've added AI to. So depending on the nature of your organization, you can approach each of them slightly differently. But the whole point is you need to incorporate AI into the conversation. We've completed a digital code of ethics. AI is the only technology where we literally had to launch a code of ethics regarding. I liken AI to nuclear power, right? Nuclear power could be used for tremendous benefit and tremendous harm, which means that how we use AI is a very important conversation. The rules around it, the ethics associated with it. One of the difficult aspects of this is often this gets thrown onto IT. I'm sorry, but a computer science degree does not make you the world's best ethics person. Am I right? Our job is to build, to deploy, to make our technology responsive. That's why AI is a whole of organization conversation. Don't look to IT to go and deploy AI and figure all this stuff out. We need members of the business, right? In the university, it could be business school, it could be, your natural sciences, all the different organizations. We need them to partner with IT because these are just tools. And the people in IT are tool builders and tool users, but these are becoming much more invasive as a conversation. And I don't say invasive even negative, they're becoming ubiquitous. Therefore, organizations need to figure out who are we? And what do we do? And what does our culture mean? Because this isn't deploying Microsoft Word. We're not deploying something far more capable. And we want to use it effectively. We even went so far as to create an AI request form. Literally any organization in the City of Los Angeles who wants to turn on an AI tool has to get permission from about 6 or 7 people, including myself. That is traditionally something we would never do. But with AI, is something we absolutely do. And I'll tell you what, I would say the ideas are 50-50 crazy and good when it comes to AI. Some of the stuff that people are going up with are horrible, horrible ideas. I'm like, thank God I'm a part of saying no to this, right? And so that's important. If you're curious, our LA AI roadmap can be found at ita.lacity.gov/publications. So it's available for anyone who's curious to read through that. We're actually going through a review. We're actually making a roadmap 2.0 in the next 6 months or so. So when we think about AI and we think about technology, we think about really what it means for Los Angeles. We're hosting the world. We've got World Cup this year. We've got Super Bowl 2027. We've got the Olympics and Paralympics 2028, right? We've got a ton of folks coming through Southern California for a ton of major events. We need to be on our game. So what are some of the items in where technology and even AI makes a big deal? Well, LAX is a great example. LAX is one of those airports that people universally do not like, right? No one just looks at it and goes, LAX, wow, that is a pleasure of travel, right? And I worked at LAX, and everyone there knows it, like no one thinks otherwise, but literally they have a very complicated challenge. That airport was by and large, maybe I'll say this, 5 or 6 years ago, that airport was very close to what it was for the '84 Olympics, okay? And for the '84 Olympics, they're aiming at about 25 million annual visitors. So that's what it was set up for. And by the way, there's an ocean on the west. There's houses on the north, there's houses on the south, right? There's only so far, it's not like you could just expand at LAX. Before COVID, they were getting closer to about 75 million annual visitors. The reason why you and I do not thoroughly enjoy LAX is because it's like living in a house meant for 6 people and there's 20 people living in it. No one enjoys that, right? If only we could just get rid of all those other people and only we could go there, right? Our classic answer. Let's just get rid of half the people in LA, but we'll keep the good half, right? And this is always the challenge that we have in government. So one of the ideas that's been being developed, and it will be rolled out certainly in time for the 2020 Olympics, they're testing it right now, is the people mover idea. Instead of all these people driving through the horseshoe of LAX and all these cars clogging it in there, we can set up massive parking way outside, and you can just run everyone in on a train. This people mover is actually a genius. LAX is the 4th busiest global airport. Right? And this is not an old number, this is a current year number. We have AI-enabled rail. This rail can run rapidly. It's not even run by a person. It's managed automatically, and that can go get 85 million people a year through that rail system. That, my friends, is a game changer. We have 18,000 rental car capacity now with the new rental car facility. So we have massive development that is just about to get rolled out at LAX, all of which to prepare us for the mobility required for things like the 28 games. Automated traffic surveillance and control. I know we love to complain about traffic, but we literally have 45,000 loop detectors. You know that little circle on the ground that you want to kind of stop on top of to make sure the light changes for you, right? We have 4,850 intersections controlled centrally. Controlled centrally. UCLA, which is no CSU Fullerton, let's be clear. UCLA says 12 to 20% less traffic, right? Coming through this automated traffic surveillance and control. The Los Angeles is literally controlled from a traffic perspective by central sets of computers and human beings from the Department of Transportation. And then here's the one thing people say, get out of here. Yes, there will be electric virtual takeoff and landing planes flying around for 2020 Olympics. These already exist. Archer has the contract. Now, it doesn't mean you and I are going to be able to jump on them. When I see the words VIP, I assume I'm not part of that list, right? And I don't know, maybe in your world you are a part of that list, but in my world I'm not. But these are 4-passenger, quiet, low-emission, autonomous, they have a 20-minute range, autonomous air taxis, and they are already set up and ready to go for the 2028 Olympics. Because when it's all said and done, when you think about what technology can do, one of our problems when it comes to traffic is, first of all, we have a lot of people who drive by themselves in a car. Okay? So that makes things less efficient. We get it. Human beings are naturally not the best drivers. Okay? And so we give ourselves distance, we're looky-loos, we stare at an accident, we're looking at our phone, please do not do that. We do all sorts of stupid things. Some people even get drunk and then drive. How terrible is that? Computers, love them or not, never do those things. I live in Koreatown, in Los Angeles. We have been seeing Waymos for years. You see a Waymo on this corner with that Waymo coming this way and a third Waymo going that way. If a Waymo can manage Koreatown, anything can, right? That's incredible. Koreatown is like the busiest, most congested population zip code outside of Manhattan. And the fact that Waymo, autonomous vehicles, I loved how in 2015 we were like, where's our autonomous cars? And then 2019 we're like, they're not coming, we were all lied to. And then quietly, there they are. That's often how it is with technology. And so the idea that we're now moving from the concept of Waymo to air taxis, this becomes so important because one of our biggest challenges with traffic is that we're stuck in the 2-dimension. There's only so many cars you could put on a road. There's only so many that you can stack up. But once you get onto a 3rd dimension, once you can start to raise up to altitude, now you can expand your capacity. But it comes with ethical challenges, doesn't it? Do any of you want to see a whole bunch of things flying around in the air all the time, right? No one does. And so there's a long list of challenges that come with it, but our ability as a city to be able to manage a population, to be able to get you a shorter commute, etc., it becomes quintessentially important that you either go underground, like Elon tried to, or you go overground, like air taxis do. But these are not just a thing, these are real. Public safety is key, right? We have VR training already running for our police officers. One of the biggest challenges, even though there's been a dramatic reduction in officer-involved shootings, but there is a huge lens on being a police officer. Love them or hate them, being a police officer is not an easy job, right? To be clear. Our ability to train new recruits, who, by the way, are in a gymnasium, carrying pretend pistols, wearing their goggles, and what they see is their training officer, and they're on the top of a hotel. So they are jumping into an immersive environment in which this person is pretending to jump, trying to jump off a hotel, which, by the way, is a famous hotel in Hollywood. So they're getting repetition and they're getting training on how to talk somebody off the ledge. On top of that, what if that person pulls a weapon on you? So you could run through all of these automated scenarios before in real life you run into them. So you can build training, you build capacity. It gives an opportunity for officers to de-escalate, to work on reducing use of force, right? And so these are such powerful tools, all of it being run out of a gymnasium not too far from Dodger Stadium. Apps become key. We have something called the MyLA 311 system, where anybody could report an illegally dumped couch, a pothole, graffiti, you name it, right? There's 96 plus services, 96 plus services, we increased them. 96 plus services that could get requested through this app. The idea that anybody, you don't have to be a wealthy lawyer, you don't have to be a person who's got some fancy title, anybody can submit a request to clean up their neighborhood is a powerful tool, which means we can empower all sorts of communities to get the same kinds of city services that more affluent communities get, all through the palm of their hand with a free app. This is so popular that we're at a place now where we're receiving over 3 million requests a year. 3 million. We rolled this out on Salesforce, as in we modernized it last year onto the Salesforce platform. We had a 20% increase. That's what put us up at 3 million requests a year. That is so powerful. And then we leverage all sorts of artificial intelligence. Specifically, we use it for some of the back end, like routes. The ability to send sanitation trucks on the right routes, or street sweepers, or for folks who pick up these bulky items, so that we can maximize. Because God knows you don't want to go from San Pedro to pick up something, then up to Pacoima to pick up something. You should be in a very efficient route of what you pick up and where you pick that up. Again, that is that trifold technology with data with human resources working together, so that someone can say, someone literally left a couch on my front parking strip, and then within a week, we have a crew picking it up efficiently and getting rid of it appropriately at no cost, We discussed this a little bit before, but this idea of AI for the Palisades fire. Artificial intelligence reviews building plans now at the City of LA and allows them to save time because they can get their applications tightened up before it ever reaches a human, and allows us to not have to review things that we have to red ink over and over again. That works for everybody. We want compliance, they want speed and efficiency. AI, of course, has been powerful for that. Because previously, we did not have a tool that could read thousands of pages of code and then read your 100-page application and reconcile the two. It had to be humans. Now humans can focus in on some of the more complicated things. But the easier things we're now leveraging AI for. Infrastructure. We were the first big city in America with 5G. It actually was over at the convention center. We're now at a place now where we have over 9,000 5G access points. This is very quietly spoken. I live in Koreatown. I can pull out a simple Samsung smartphone, not some extreme, this is a nicer one, don't mind me. But I had a simple Samsung S24, right? Not the fanciest even one. And I went ahead and I did a speed test. If you're ever curious, you could do a speed test. Ookla even has an app, but you could just Google speed test. And it'll test the speed of your connection, whether you're on Wi-Fi or whether you're on cellular. And for geeks like me, I like to go from place to place checking the speeds of different things. I was just standing there in my house in Koreatown, and I was getting over 1 gig down. A gigabit connection off a service that costs $13 a month. Not saying that's the speed you're going to get where you're at. Depends on the provider you have, depends on the population, etc. But can you imagine, we live in a world, honestly, 10 years ago, that would have melted your phone. So quietly, we find things are advancing and progressing, even the connectivity of our phones. If you live in the hills, I know some of you may be over Chino Hills and all sorts of other things, I apologize. You're not going to get the same kind of connectivity as we get in Koreatown. But if you'd like to join us for some really good Calbee and some other things, then you'll get that kind of connectivity. Okay, I'm sorry. The reasons why you have the problem in the hills is, of course, they say there's not a lot of people, so they're not investing a lot in the infrastructure. And so you may not be getting all of that ubiquitous speed. But where there's people, they put the money into the infrastructure. Solar City. We have been the #1 solar city in America since 2018. We are constantly deploying. A lot of it's weather, but there's other incentives and other values to it too. But these are really important things because as much as we want to deploy technology, all of the technology we deploy has impact. Other infrastructure items. You may have seen this in the news. People, like another urban problem. 100 years ago, no one would have said, you know what, there's going to be people who go and pull wire out of streetlights. Who would have thought that? In fact, the street lighting system 100 years ago was built for access. You just had a screwdriver, you could just go gain access to it. Because 100 years ago, people apparently didn't think to start pulling wires out of it. Fast forward to today, and people will steal wire out of your streetlight. I run into this issue myself, where I live. And so infrastructure becomes critical. And so you can try to replace the wire with different wire. You could try to police it. There's a long list of things you could do. But certainly one of the more innovative things is to bypass the problem entirely. If you just have a solar-powered street light, and in Los Angeles you can get away with that quite often, we're going to get away with 60,000 of them, right? It's about half of our street light population. If you could just do a solar-powered street light, number one, you're using much less electricity, you're burning less fossil fuels, there's a ton of things that are advantages to it, and there's no copper wire to pull. Who knows, maybe we'll actually hire them to pull the wire, replace it, and salvage it appropriately, I don't know. But the point is, these are such powerful concepts, and it's technology that created the solar-powered street light, which didn't exist as a feasible tool 10 years ago. LA is award-winning, okay? But becoming a smart city, it really is a journey. You don't arrive, you don't achieve. You know, we've received awards from Bloomberg Philanthropies, Harvard gave us an award, the Barcelona conference is a big smart city conference, we've earned awards from there. We received City in the Cloud from Amazon Web Services, and we've been #1 digital city in America 3 times. We're not like the San Franciscos, which love to brag about such things. You just assume in San Francisco you've got to be tech and innovative. There's a lot of things that people can do, and it's not me. There's a lot of really good, intelligent, hardworking people who, much like at schools, they've joined governments because they felt like they could make a difference. Schools, universities, schools, these are good places to work for all the challenges they have out there. These are good and very impressive places to work. And so every journey, of course, needs a roadmap. And so you'll find that you can find this same kind of Smart LA 2028 strategy at the same place that we have our AI roadmap. We took 78 different experts across 24 different departments to create all these smart city projects, and all of it was really intended to be able to deploy technology to help us host the world for the 2028 Olympics. And so to learn more, feel free to check out, again, ita.lac.gov, Smart LA 28. We're more than happy to make that available. So thank you very much for listening to me. I'm not sure if we're out of time.
Thank you very much.
Sure.
I'm going to open it up. If anybody has any questions for Ted?
I'm good for questions. High price consultant, free advice. Yes.
What stocks should we be buying in AI?
Honestly, that's actually a really good question, because who would have thought NVIDIA would have been so popular? Like, NVIDIA was like, what's an NVIDIA and who cares? And only to find that's a huge conversation. I think anything that there's a lot of, I'm not an investment advisor, but sometimes there's innovation and sometimes where the money is and they don't quite land in the same place. There's a lot of money being spent in cybersecurity. So I would say solid AI companies in the world of cybersecurity is the match made in heaven of innovation plus people willing to spend money on it.
So more CrowdStrike's.
Honestly, CrowdStrike has that reputation for having its outage, but companies like that are still making money hand over fist and doing really, really well. Who else? Any other questions? Oh, sure. Yeah, sure. If anyone has a question, feel free to step up here. Don't be nervous. Don't be shy. There are no bad questions. There really aren't. I work in this area, so I know what I'm talking about. You don't work in my area, so no one has expectations of that. Yeah. And I've been doing, believe it, this job for 10 years. I've been with the city for over 20.
Okay, so on a more serious question.
Sure.
How do you enforce compliance when you use AI? So there's guardrails against AI becoming rogue or AI making decisions that were not intended to.
Sure. Yeah, a lot of it, and that's part of why we do an AI request form. So, Google Gemini has only so far it could go, right? Google Gemini, for your email, for example, you'd be like, rewrite me the email. Worst case scenario, it writes a horrible offensive email that you need to still send, right? And so you have certain controls on some of the tools. We use Workday. Workday has AI. Again, only so far it will go. And by the way, these are corporations that if it started to do terrible things would be really embarrassed and lose all their stock price. So There's those areas of control. Once you start to get into AI as a service, now you're starting to open the door a little bit. There's more flexibility, more power, more flexibility. In that case, we then start to work closely with the IT folks who are building those LLMs, for example. How are you training your model? What's the model doing? Have you verified various aspects? Now take it one step further to vendor-built, these custom kinds of solutions. Those are the ones in which we have the highest burden of proof, so to speak. We need them to ensure that bias is being considered. We need to have an annual evaluation. So there's whole sets of things that we make more and more difficult and more regulated, so to speak, the further along that spectrum that they go. Sure.
So given your current role, what is one challenge you wish AI could solve right now that it can't, but you think maybe could in 5 years?
Ooh, that's a good question. What's one? Call centers. It's funny enough because you'd say, well, AI for call centers, a lot of folks are doing that. It's actually prohibitively expensive. So we have a call center, we've lost 30% of our call center staff in the last 2 years because of budget reduction. And they're the most expensive division in my entire group. I am not a kind of person who wants to try to automate that, but I can't get call center staff to work at 2 a.m. There's all sorts of difficulties there. AI is not quite there, not ready for prime time on call centers. There are some who can pull that off, but it would be cost prohibitive for us to be able to deploy that. But I would expect in the next 5 years that we will be running it in the middle of the night, and we will be able to help handle the breadth of what we have to handle from a call center perspective. We literally have hundreds of topics, thousands of topics that someone could ask about, and AI is not yet there to be able to handle it. I'll repeat the question.
I think we are coming to a point where on one side we have this compliance talking about, get rid of data.
Yeah.
On the other side, what I see fast forward 5 years, the models are going to make sure there will be consolidation, so the differentiator will be data.
Yes.
Right.
So on one side he says regulators like get rid of data, on the other side the differentiator is going to be the data itself.
Data. So
yes.
How do you do that?
We're just sitting here in the middle, aren't we? Yeah, there's a lot of that, isn't there? I think to say case by case is not right, but like I would say channel by channel or pillar, vertical. There are some areas in which you don't want to have a lot of extra data on something. Like I don't need people's credit card information, right? So there's some areas in which from a regulatory perspective, I don't want to be a part of it. But there's other areas that if I can capture data, then I could become a differentiator. And maybe from a university perspective, it could be a differentiator to improve our ability to teach. It could improve our ability to deploy services and resources. It can improve the availability of services to various students. So it starts to become kind of a differentiating conversation. Ideally, different groups would work together and they would appreciate each other. One of my biggest complaints is that when city attorney comes across, they want to stop everything. But they don't have to deploy innovation. So I'm being on one hand told that my innovation can change the lives of millions. On the other hand, I'm being told by attorneys that we don't want you to do anything. That's probably my equivalent of what you're describing. Maybe the right answer is for the city attorney to start to appreciate the innovation. So I think too often we were allowed to be separated and all I did was risk management. All I manage is risk. But there's a risk in not innovating. So I think it's requiring organizations to be more holistic. And as IT, we're often found in the middle because we see both sides very clearly, yet both sides are not really talking to each other, which requires leadership, not just from IT, but of course, like executive leadership. So I think the better organizations in the world, the Amazons, the Metas, et cetera, the better organizations have probably done a better job of connecting two groups, pulling them together with some kind of North Star, some kind of vision. But in government and universities, I think too often, we are happy to keep them all separate, but it ruins the experience for our customer.
Change by the way, thank you for coming.
Sure.
So changing topics a little bit, how is the city handling accessibility? That's obviously one of the people in differences.
Sure, accessibility. Like specific around like the upcoming ADA regulations?
Exactly. Right.
Okay. Yeah, so great question. So when it comes to ADA compliance and kind of the upcoming rule, we have different, what quite often happens with me, segmentation becomes important. I have a central IT group. We run the city's main website, social media, apps, et cetera. What I could do with my group, we have a lot of control over. And in that organization, we're very aggressive about ensuring that we are meeting ADA compliance at a very high level. But then I've got other organizations who will put up a website, put up some project website, et cetera, and they're not meeting their obligations. So what we've done, and this is what works, we believe in our organization, is we warn everybody in advance of what's coming. We warn them about what the standard is. We do automated compliance reviews. They have access to log in themselves. We, of course, will send them reports periodically too. And so what invariably happens, like almost like students, you've got your top students and you've got your not so top students. So, and the problem here is that this isn't even about making anyone feel bad. This is about accessibility. You cannot, from my perspective, you cannot have an app or a website and not make it accessible. The same way that it's not acceptable to have an app or website that's not secure. You can't be in the world of having something if you can't handle those other things. So we start to shame them a little bit. We start to bring in city council, right? They're warned, they had time. Invariably, they'll say something like, well, I don't have enough money. Well, you had enough money to build it. You just don't have enough money to feed it. I think we'd all look very badly at someone who owned a dog but wouldn't feed their dog, right? You were able to buy the dog, and you're not feeding your dog. Same goes for a website. It's got to be ADA compliant. That's just a part of the care and feeding of that website. So feel free to get rid of that website. We'd all be happy about that. Find an owner who would like that dog, so to speak. So feel free to get rid of that website. But if you're going to be that, we're going to be bringing more and more people who you do not want to get mad into the visibility of the conversation. And invariably, it starts to drive the conversation of either retire that website or get up to standard. And here's the tools we'll provide to get you up to standard.
When I think of LA as an out-of-towner, I think of a city that has many cities within it.
Yes.
When you look at Los Angeles and everything that you're doing, leading its digital roadmap and technology, is technology being implemented at a citywide level, or do you focus a lot of these services on specific municipalities, local government within the city at large?
That's a really great question. So from a city perspective, we have a lot of communities, a lot of diverse constituents. I hate to say that too often IT strategy starts to become a yes and conversation. So we will have citywide initiatives around fire response, police response, emergency management. So all sorts of things that work for every community. And for those areas, our key performance indicators is around equity. We want to make sure that we're not favoring, especially a more affluent community over a less affluent community. But then there are differences between them. For anyone who knows LA neighborhoods, if you knew Palisades, you knew that Palisades is a unique neighborhood, right? It trends wealthier, doesn't mean that everyone's wealthy. It trends wealthier, and it's secluded. So this is a group of people who tend to get away. It used to take time to get to Palisades, so they chose to be relatively secluded, so that, of course, as these events occur, it now influences their culture and who they are. They saw themselves as a very tight-knit community. Honestly, they probably didn't see themselves as a part of LA, right? That often happens. So when it comes to certain tools and certain services, we like to have some flexibility where we can tune them up a little bit. So giving the ability for downtown with its congested, kind of highly downtown, there's people who come in, there's people who leave, and there's a short list who live. It gives us the ability to start to kind of have some flexibility as how the technology gets deployed, is if we can have some form of configuration around that. So that's kind of the broad answer associated with it. And that's what's beautiful about technology. When done right, there's some forms of customization you can do that allow a locality to be somewhat different than another, but at the same time, there's a lot of commonality across all of it. Saw some hands over here. I don't want to, yes, sir.
So, as you're reviewing software that has AI built into it, outside of the most obvious filters that you need to use, what are other considerations that you normally use to filter out blank pages or contracts with some of the software?
Okay. How do we filter out AI capabilities in the software?
No, like, because you were saying that there's a committee or group of
Yes.
people you're part of that there's some AI that you're probably objecting to.
Ah, yes.
I'm just curious, outside of the obvious stuff like legal.
Sure. And online, as part of we have this AI safety checklist. So we have like 30 questions, which, by the way, we wrote as humans, then we asked AI if we missed anything. Okay? So we have this AI safety checklist that allows us to say check. So there's a series of items in there that I'm probably forgetting to answer to. But I think, like, for example, one of them will be like, let's say you're doing an AI tool, let's say it's call center related. We like the idea of giving you a choice to choose a human That's one of the requirements that we have. So you're not just stuck in AI purgatory with a certain tool. We like the idea of, quite often, we tend to focus in as people on bias. Very few of AI systems I've seen yet really make a decision where bias is that important. And I know that sounds like, oh my gosh, what is he saying? There are many AI tools that don't. There's human in the middle. They're not really making decisions that negatively impact somebody. There are some that can. But just know where bias fits into it. So bias has actually not been the number one reason for most of the things that we've rejected. Privacy and security has been the number one thing that we've utilized. I would say the number one issue with AI up until now in my world is someone taking something proprietary or confidential and putting it into a tool, an AI tool, that has no business having access to that data. So that's, for us, I think, been number one for it. It's kind of like people who never seen a phishing email they didn't like clicking on. Right? Human beings love to take confidential things and put it into non-confidential places because for them, the user interface is just all one big blur, right? And so, I mean, recently we had an experienced career professional who received an email saying, I am your boss, send me $1,000 in credit cards or in gift cards. And I'm looking at this person, they're an executive leader, and I'm thinking, why did you fall for this, right? And this is not a dumb person in any way, not an unintelligent person, but people are having a hard time with technology, even still. And so I think when it comes to AI, one of the biggest challenges is people not quite grasping where it starts, where it stops. Where do I take this and where does it go? And I think as professionals, we're very familiar with, well, this is data and it's in the cloud. People still don't know what the cloud is, folks. They don't know what it is. And this is increasingly what we're working with, are groups of people who are getting lost and left behind, but are using these systems and making big decisions. So I hate to say it this way, but increasingly I think we're going to get to a world where we curate their world for them, which sounds awfully arrogant, but where we're creating what you can and can't do, which makes IT that much more important.
I have a question about error rates. So for example, the scenario you put up there about AI examining construction plans for code violations.
Yep.
I presume we probably know what the error rate is of a human doing that.
Yep.
Because they're going to make mistakes and they've been doing it for a long time.
Yes.
Do we know what the error rate would be for AI doing that?
We do.
1 and 2.
Yes.
What's the legal burden looking like going forward? If AI makes a mistake and
Yes.
some result from that. Whereas if a human made the mistake, it probably would be the same repercussion.
Yes.
But the legal burden may be a little different.
So number one, how does AI match up against people for the pre-plan check review? And number two, what about the legal burden? Because I don't know about you, but the minute a Waymo drives over a person, we're going to go berserk, right? But I'm sorry, statistically, some 16-year-old probably drove over a person yesterday, and none of us are talking about it, right? And so we have a very high standard of a burden over it. On the error rate side, the pre-plan check is significantly better than human beings. We know that, and it's not just say it has confidence rates in it. So it'll say, I'm 100% confident this is an issue. And maybe if it gets below 75%, then it starts to maybe not weigh it in. So human beings don't have confidence values. We just say right or wrong. These are actually so sophisticated that they're actually showing their level of confidence in the answer that they give. Significantly better than humans when it comes to that area. There's a book called Machine Platform Crowd. It's a little older. It's an MIT book. It gets exactly into these types of topics. Basically, it says once computers could beat humans at Go and at chess, etc., it was over, folks. Like it's right. Once they were beating our very best people at these games, then it started to become obvious that they were going to get better at certain kinds of work, and it scares us because we think of them as spreadsheets. Like you do some calculations, but I do the thinking here. On the other side of it, when it comes to the legal aspect, that's this cultural perspective around. I was ready to roll out Google Gemini to 28,000 employees a year before I did. When I did roll it out, the first time I actually rolled it out for a few days, one politician called another politician and said, you can't do this, you're crazy. And then that politician told me to bring it right back. There was a cultural fear of me rolling out Google Gemini, of me rolling out a tool to help you rewrite your emails. And it was really around what you were describing. A year later, a year of convincing I had to do. And then after that year of convincing, that same politician's like, I want everything to be AI, right? And that's what we're getting at, is it's not just about technology anymore. It's about people and concerns and fears. I have to answer for things all the time. I'm Mr. Answer for things, which, by the way, it's not what I signed up for, to be honest. Like, go do your own technology if you guys want to go do that. But I am called to task over and over again. Ted, your system did this. It doesn't matter what technology we deploy, it's always my system. I'm somehow accountable for everything that it does. And I think one of the number one reasons why governments, universities, et cetera, are, because they're more risk averse, we are deploying less technology. And because we deploy less technology, we're seen as behind the times. But if we deployed everything that was out there, there would be more mistakes. And as soon as the mistakes happen, everyone throws up their hands and is looking for a villain. So there's only so much risk tolerance universities and cities and others have. In Amazon, they do all sorts of crazy stuff, right? And they just throw it away if it doesn't work right. And so we are held to different standards.
Thank you very much for coming today.
Sure. My pleasure.
And before I hand you some goodies to take with you.
Go Titans.
Yes. I know you have just a few facts. Number
Sure.
one, Cal State Fullerton this year passed UCLA's undergrad in size.
Yes.
So we need not worry about the comparison.
That's right. Good.
We know we're better than UCLA.
Yes.
It's okay.
Yes.
Okay. So
I'm a state school guy.
And then the second thing is, everything that you're doing at the city, you are providing a baseline that is not going to be retreated from, that is elevating workforces of the future. Because once the city goes a direction, all the businesses, services, private, public, philanthropic, everywhere else now have that baseline to operate off of. So for all of us in the room, we're looking at the future of workforce and what will be the baseline. So everything we do day to day for the benefit of our students that are coming through here, 2, 4, 6 year, whatever their duration is with us, they're looking at what Ted's providing to be the places they're going to move in for employment. So keep
Very
that
good.
in mind moving forward.
Very good.
Thank you again.
Thank you.
Great having you.
My pleasure. Thank you all. Great.
Take the mic off for you.
I will do that.
We'll have one of those.
All right, thank you all. We're going to transition to our history of IT.